Today, we're going to explore something called the Wheel of Consent. The Wheel of Consent is an incredible tool. It's actually a map for you to explore all of your relationships. Not only your relationship in your partnership, but your relationship with yourself and your relationship with the world. It's about consent. Consent is knowing what you want and being able to ask for it. The truth is that most of us have never been taught this. Especially when we were kids, we were just like, things have been done to us without us asking, and we didn't have the voice to say no or say yes. So we haven't learned how to say yes, and we haven't learned how to say no. And so we found ourselves in this very convoluted space where we don't know how to ask for what we want, and we don't know how to receive when something is given to us. The Wheel of Consent gives us a very good, clear tool to be able to understand how to give, to receive, to take, and to allow. It was designed by Dr. Betty Martin, who's an incredible woman who before entering the realms of intimacy was an engineer. So she made it very clear, which I think is really a relief because relationships are so complicated. Consent can be so obscure. So to have something that is simple, clear, and to the point gives us a bit of breather and a bit of space in order to work with these complicated issues, let's be honest. And so we're going to explore the different quadrants. If you open the PDF associated to the course, you can see the wheel. It's a circle that has 4 quadrants. One is giving, that is associated to the receiving. One is taken, that is associated to the allowing. The top part of the quadrants are action that you are actually going to do. You're going to be the one in action with them. The 2 bottom quadrants are actions that are done to you, to your body, or to your experience of life. This is mapped especially around touch. So you can extend it to all aspects of life, but the way that Dr. Betty Martin is really focalized on is how to make this an embodied practice. And as we've seen, the embodiment happens inside of this physical body. And so we use touch in order to make it more tangible. But let me just break down what the different quadrants are at the moment so you have an idea. The first quadrant is giving. And giving and receiving are matched together. You give a gift and somebody else receives it. Giving is giving without any expectation, but because most of us are not really good at taking, there's always an agenda in our giving. I'm going to give this to somebody because actually I want that from them, because I want something from them and not something with them. And so the giving comes because the other wants to receive something. So somebody tells you, I want to receive flowers. And then because they ask you what they want to receive, it needs to feel wonderful for them. You can give them that gift, accepting to give them a gift. And that gives a space where there's a mutuality between the giver and the receiver. There is shadow aspects to all of these quadrants. You might know the shadow aspect of the giver very well, the do-gooder. I'm giving because you want to do good, but then you feel completely depleted because it's not being received. But actually, did somebody tell you that they wanted that? Or are you just giving because you want to be liked? Or you are giving because you want to be loved, and it's not actually what the other person has been asking to receive. So that's the shadow aspect of giving. The do-gooder, the person that's trying to always people pleaser, this is really the shadow. The light aspect of giving, when you know how to give, it is actually generosity, because you can give totally without any expectation of return, without feeling that somebody's going to invade your space, because there's a boundary that's set. And so one of the clear aspects in the Wheel of Consent is to set up the boundaries, and that will become clearer once we will play the 3-minute game. Then the receiving. Receiving is allowing a gift to be given to you. And that's also something that may be very difficult for people because, well, it's very vulnerable to receive. There's so many situations where you can't trust, or, it's just like, oh, can I receive this? Really? Is there speaking about me? There's so many parts of us that don't feel good enough, that don't feel seen enough. So we can't really hold what the gift is. And so one of the little, pleasure hacks I give you this week, and it might be difficult, is to give a compliment to somebody and then allow yourself to receive when the compliment is given to you. And that's why the exercise of receiving the breath that I keep on repeating in meditation is really wonderful, because it weaves that practice of learning how to receive into your everyday breath, into the 26,000 breaths you do in a day. You can learn how to receive. And so that's really a good little hack. Receiving has a shadow aspect. The shadow aspect is the freeloader. I'm just going to receive, and just, not even acknowledge the gift that has been given. But the light aspect of receiving is gratitude. And so when you receive a gift and you're thankful for it, the mutuality of the generosity of the giver in the light aspect that has listened to what the gift that wanted to be received was, and the one that is receiving it by being open to the gift, is gratitude. So here we have the giving, receiving quadrants of the wheel of consent. And then we have two other quadrants, the taking and the allowing. Taking is always a bit complicated. Sometimes it's receiving. Anyways, we all have one quadrant that we're better at it than the other. But taking, especially in the society in which we live, we've been taking is not good, I should not take, this is not something that's right. Yet taking, when you know what you want and you're pretending that you don't want that, and that you're going to hide yourself and give something because you expect the other to give you back what you've actually wanted to take, that's all convoluted. That's all hidden mirrors. When you know what you want, and what you want from another person, or what you want for a situation, let's even talk about a work situation. I want this raise. So if you want this raise, you can ask for it. This is what you want to take. And you allow your boss to say, well, I allowed this to happen, but these are the conditions, or I don't allow it. But you give the possibility to the other to choose. So the taking is asking for what you want from the other. So rather than you giving the gift, you are taking the action, but the one who's giving the gift is the one who is being done to. It's the other. So by asking for what you want to take, you actually empower the other to give you the gift of their bodies. This is in terms of, you will see later, how the 3-minute game, which is a game about touch, giving and receiving touch, taking and allowing touch, is played out. The shadow aspect of taking, which we see a lot in society today, is abuser, gropper. We can go all the way to rape, which people want to take something but have not asked for it. So they just have this sense of entitlement. They want it because it's a shadow aspect, because they're scared that if they ask, they are going to be rejected. So what parts of you are scared of being rejected if you ask? And what are all the little insidious ways that you play out in your life to pretend that you're giving something because you're actually truly terrified of asking for what you want because of being scared of rejection? Well, whereas let's remove the rejection from the equation. When you ask, you're giving yourself the opportunity to be clear with what you want, and you're giving the power of the other to say, well, actually, perhaps, yes, I can offer you this. Yet, there's a certain boundary here that would allow me to give you the gift of my being totally without feeling invaded by you. So the shadow aspect of the taker is the gropper, and it's taking without asking. Really without asking. And this is where the consent comes. I am asking for what I want to take, and I'm giving the person I'm taking from the choice and the power to say yes or no. And to say yes with these conditions, no, absolutely not. The light aspect of the wheel of consent of taking is integrity. Integrity means I know what I want. I can ask for it. I will accept that it might not be accepted by the other. And I can also accept that the other will choose to give me that with a caveat or certain boundaries and limitation. And then my role as the taker is to accept the boundaries that were given to me. And when I accept the boundaries, it allows the allower to surrender, knowing that they can give the gift of their body, they can give what was wanting to be taken totally without feeling that more will be taken from them. And so that creates a sense of freedom, and that creates a sense of like surrender for the allower. Allowing, on the other side of the taking, is giving the gift of your body to another, or giving the gift of allowing another to take from you. And think about any situation, you know. For example, there's this person in your family which is always like speaking about, you know, politics. And you don't want to speak about politics because it's not your thing, but you know that it brings them so much joy. So that's for their taking, that is for their pleasure. And you can perhaps allow them that conversation when you are with them, and then put a boundary and like, okay, I'm okay speaking about politics with you, but when you speak about this particular issue, that's too much for me. And so you're giving them the gift of what they want from you, but you're also putting a boundary of that particular issue that would make you feel really uncomfortable to be the caveat, and that allows you a space of mutuality. So you feel empowered rather than you feel imposed upon. So for the allower, this should not feel wonderful to them. It must feel okay. But it must feel wonderful for the taker who has asked with integrity. Whereas for the giver and the receiver, this needs to feel wonderful for the receiver, and the giver does it for the pleasure of the receiver. And so in the allowing quadrant, what is really happening is, well, there's different aspects. One of the aspects of allowing is when it's in shadow space, is I'm just going to allow because I want to be loved. And so I'm going to allow, and I'm going to become a doormat, and I'm going to become a martyr, and all of these things are happening to me, and I'm going to become a victim because this is happening to me. And yes, abuse happens, rape happens, all of these situations happens. Yet, when you are allowing and you know that something is being taken from you, and you can stand up for yourself and say, actually, I can give you the gift of taking this from me, but I have this boundary. Meaning, let's go for touch, for example. I'm allowing you to caress my arm, but holding my hand is not something that I really like. And so you can let the other person caress your arm and notice how much you can relax, knowing that you've set up a boundary, and also witness if that boundary is respected by the other, if there is integrity that's there. And so the gift of the allowing in its light aspect is surrender. I can surrender my being to another because I trust that I have put strong boundaries, my strong yes and my strong no, and then I can observe over time, right, that the other is respecting the boundaries that I have set up. And that can always change. So you can see the beautiful dynamics that are happening in this wheel and how this can be applied not only in your partnership, but in your relationship with self. What do you give to yourself? What do you receive from yourself? What do you want to take from yourself? And what do you want to allow from yourself? And how when you observe these dynamics, not only in your intimacy, but in all of your life, you can see they permeate everything. And they give you a clear way of setting boundaries, of giving generously, of receiving with gratitude, of taking with integrity, and of allowing with surrender. And when all of these dynamics are more or less clear inside of yourself, then they're clear in your relationship, and there's not all of these obscurity around it. And so we're going to be exploring conscious touch in our next video, and with it, I will give you the 3-minute game practice, that is the practice that comes with the wheel of consent, to explore the dynamic of giving and taking, allowing and receiving within the wheel of consent. And as a game that is playful and fun to explore with your partner, something that you can play dressed, something that you can play naked, something that you can play in a restaurant, or something that you can play in the bedroom. And that's what's really magic about it. Because not only is it going to influence your own personal intimacy, but also all of your relationship. To really ask for what you want and receive it by being clear, simply like that. And this is intimacy, being connected to the core of who you are and knowing what you want so you can express it with clarity and transparency and receive it. So the 3-minute game has 2 questions. And if you remember, as we were working on the wheel of consent, we have giving, receiving, taking, allowing. Giving and takings are action that you do to another. And so from the giving to the receiving, someone is doing the action to somebody else who is receiving the gift. So this action is for the person receiving. From the taking to allowing, the action is done for the person taking for their own pleasure, and the person allowing is giving the gift of their body to them. So this translates in 2 very simple questions. My dear, how would you like to be touched for the next 3 minutes? This is giving, receiving. You are asked what you want to receive, and you sit with this question inside of your body. How do I want to be touched for the next 3 minutes? And then once you are aware, feeling, and how you want to be touched by this person is very different than how you want to be touched by another person. How you want to be touched at 3 in the morning is different than how you want to be touched at 6 p.m. So it can always change. And that's also the beauty of this game, is to know that you can ask for what you want, but also if it doesn't feel wonderful, you can change. So for example, I want to receive a massage. What type of massage? I want to receive a massage in my upper shoulders. And I want the pressure to be this way. And then you give a boundary. But it doesn't really feel comfortable if you scratch my back. So now the person that's going to give has the parameters of what you want to receive, a massage, where on the shoulders with a certain pressure, and there's a boundary which is not at this place or not scratching like that, and then there's a container. And they are going to give that to you. It's like, okay, I can give that to you. That doesn't need to feel wonderful for the person giving. It needs to feel wonderful for the person receiving. So throughout yourself receiving, you ask yourself, does this feel wonderful to me? Or the person giving it to you can ask, does this feel wonderful to you? And then you say, maybe it doesn't feel that wonderful. Can you change here? And then you say how you want it to be changed, if so, and you witness how the person giving is listening to what you ask. Or if they're trying to give you more than they ask. Because sometimes we do that. We're asked one thing, but then we want to give more. But by giving more, are we really giving to the other? Are we really listening to what they want from it? Or are we just taking because we think that if we give more, we're going to be loved more? And so the person giving needs to notice in their own self if they can give totally, generously, without expectation of return, and notice if they're trying to give more than what was asked for. The person receiving observes if they can express what they want to receive, if that feels wonderful to them at all times, and how they can open to receive more from that as the conditions and the boundaries are set up. And then once you'll do that, you will switch and you'll be, darling, how do you want to receive for the next 3 minutes? How do you want to be touched for the next 3 minutes? And so this is really key to be able to explore what we've seen in the body map is the different types of touch, kneading, touching, scratching, licking, breathing, but also non-physical touch. You can want to be in the space with your partner and you want them to read you a story. That's how you want to be touched by them. So be curious, be playful, explore, and have fun. And so now from the taking, allowing quadrant, the question is, how do you want to touch me for your own pleasure for the next 3 minutes? So this is not for your pleasure, meaning it is not the one who is receiving the touch that is supposed to have pleasure, but it's the one taking, that is taking for his own pleasure of what he wants from you. So it doesn't need to feel wonderful for the person receiving the touch. It needs to feel okay for them. You do not need to tolerate it, because if you put boundaries, you can accept and give the gift of your body, surrendering to being taken from, because that is a gift that you offer the person, your beloved. You're offering the gift of your body to them for their own pleasure. And then you set up a boundary. And so that makes things quite clear, because the way that your partner wants to touch you might be very different than the type of touch you want to receive. But because you love them, you can allow them to touch you in that way if you set up a boundary for yourself that will be respected and gives you the space to be able to surrender without feeling that you're being abused, taking advantage, or manipulated in the situation. So, beloved, how do you want to touch me for your own pleasure? And then the taker will have to sit and be really honest. What do I want to take from this person? And be clear that this is for you. How do you want to take from them? It is not for them. And then with integrity say, well, perhaps I would like to scratch your neck and bite you here. This is for their pleasure, not for your pleasure. And then the person allowing sits with that and says, I can allow that for you, but I'm not really much into scratching, or maybe not in a place where people can see the marks. And so you give the gift of being taken from, but you've set up a boundary. When the practice happens, the person who is taking needs to notice over and over again, am I trying to give them pleasure? Because this is not what we're trying to do here. This is for your own pleasure as a taker. And then the person allowing needs to notice, are they respecting the boundary that I have set, or are they crossing over the boundary? And if the boundary is set and respected, notice how your body feels, and if you can surrender deeper from the gift of having given your body to be taken from. And then when that is complete, the person who has taken says, thank you. And the person who has allowed says, you're welcome. And then in the giving, receiving, the person receiving says, thank you. And the person giving said, you're welcome. And so you see the mutuality of the experience here. So it comes back down to these two questions. Giving, receiving. Beloved, how do you want to be touched for the next 3 minutes? Taking, allowing. Beloved, how do you want to touch me for your own pleasure for the next 3 minutes? And so now the invitation is for you to go into the exploration. You're going to go into the giving, receiving first, one by one, and then you're going to switch to the taking, allowing, and really give yourself the space and time to explore this, and know that you can always change your mind. If this doesn't feel wonderful, you can always express a stronger boundary if you feel that you cannot surrender completely to what's being taken. So have fun, explore, and be curious.